Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josey. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of Badassery herself, the real Jen Josey. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josey, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing one of their past projects. We will let you decide if it was good or bad or just plain ugly. But before we begin, here's today's Badassery Bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is the power of accountability groups. In the world of real estate investing, success isn't just about knowing the numbers or finding deals. It's about staying consistent, pushing through challenges, and holding yourself to a higher standard. That's where accountability groups come in. These power-packed alliances of like-minded investors can be the difference between spinning your wheels and making serious progress. Here are 5 reasons why you need to get yourself into one ASAP. Number 1, built-in motivation. Surrounding yourself with ambitious, driven people will keep you fired up. On days when self-doubt creeps in, your accountability group will remind you why you started. Number 2, no more excuses. When you know you have to report back to the group, those "I'll do it tomorrow" moments disappear. Your peers will call you out, in a good way, to push you to take action. Number 3, collective brain power. Stuck on a deal? Unsure about your next step? Your accountability group is a goldmine of knowledge, experience, and creative problem solving. Lean on them and watch your solutions multiply. Number 4, expanding your network. The right group doesn't just keep you accountable, it connects you with potential partners, lenders, and mentors. Relationships built in these groups can lead to game-changing success. Number 5, level up faster. Learning from the mistakes and wins of others accelerates your own business. Why make every mistake yourself when you can fast track your growth with shared wisdom? So, if you want to take your real estate investing game to the next level, don't go at it alone. Find or start an accountability group that will challenge, support, and propel you towards your goals. Success loves company, so make sure you're rolling with the right crew. Now, on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. We have with us my friend Jason Seward, a seasoned real estate investor and entrepreneur based in Southeast Virginia. After 17 years in insurance sales, Jason built a strong portfolio of single-family and small multifamily rentals, which ultimately gave him the confidence to leave his W-2 job in 2022. Now he's a limited partner in multiple commercial syndications and co-founder of 608B Capital Funding, a real estate debt fund specializing in short-term and hard money lending. In just 18 months, his team has raised nearly $10 million and is on track to fund over $20 million in loans by the end of 2025. Jason is also the host of Burning the Ships podcast, where he dives into mindset, entrepreneurship, and the journey of betting on yourself. I've had the pleasure of being on Burning the Ships and am honored to get him here on the RAIN podcast. So welcome to the show, Jason Seward.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
And it's a little early for me, so I feel like I'm stumbling my words, but you are so important to have here on the show today. So, Jason, thank you for being here. And let's give a quick shout out about burning the boats. And I love, sorry, burning the ships. I keep saying boats,
Oh, you're
burning
good.
the
Same thing.
ships.
Yep.
And tell us, because I love the concept of burning the ship. So, first, explain what that is, and then let's give a shout out for your podcast.
Okay, so I mean, it goes back. I'll be real quick with this, but the story goes that, like in the 1500s, Hernan Cortez was trying to lead his men to basically overtake an island, right? And they were going to settle there, and he led his men off the ships onto the island, and then gave orders to burn the ships. And the symbol there was, we're not going to have a retreat. It's either take this island or die trying. We have no plan B. There is no exit strategy or anything like that. We're here. And so that's a little bit of an extreme case, but that mentality has really been what I've built everything around, leaving my corporate career, then going all in on entrepreneurship. And then we built that became the name and theme of the podcast. So
I love that concept because I've always been told if you have a plan B, you're probably going to fall back on it. So, burning the ships, I love it, love it. So, and it is a great podcast, by the way. You interview all different types of entrepreneurs, and it is all about the mindset. And you are such a great interviewer. So, I was like, will you please come on my podcast? And you are extremely experienced in multiple assets of real estate. And we are going to talk about one of your past projects on the show. But before we get into that, let's talk real quick. Let's do a shout out also for 608B capital funding. And PS, what does 608B mean? I mean, I had a 403B when I was a teacher, but it has nothing to do with that. So what does that mean, Jason?
Yep. So it seems sophisticated. It might sound like that. We get a lot of questions, but the reality is, my business partner, Bill Phillips, and I, we've been longtime friends, went to the same college, Radford University in Southwest Virginia. And our apartment number for 3 years was 608B. So we lived at 608B Clement Street. And when we were both dabbling in real estate for years when we were working our corporate careers, but we formed a partnership around, I think, 2019, and we had to name our LLC. And I'm the creative one of the partnership, and that was one commonality we had, so we rolled with it. So.
I love it. I feel like it's a good conversation starter. It's not the very generic ones and I'm the same way. So when we created the name of our company, which is Jolific Homes, it's our last name Josey plus prolific. So it's a kind of mashup and also to kind of stand out a little bit. So I can't wait to hear about this project, by the way. And this is your first flip we're going to be discussing, but I think it's so important that you are coming from the flipping side of the business and now you're on the lending side. So how does that make you a better lender for people? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, but give us some reasons why people love borrowing your money and working with you.
Right. And most of we've done dozens of flips, but most of our transactions have been buy and hold, which is same concept. We're buying value add properties. We're fixing them up. Basically doing the BRRRR strategy for folks familiar with that. So we've done that for years, built a pretty significant portfolio of single family, small multifamily, and we continue to add to our portfolio. I mean, as we speak, we're evaluating deals and trying to make them work and things like that. Well, while building the bulk of our portfolio, we used a lot of our own capital, but we got to a point as we were scaling, we were using a lot of hard money, right? Then that evolved to us eventually having our own liquidity to lend. So we were doing some private lending. Well, when we started the fund, we built the foundation on really trying to figure out the pain points we had as borrowers, and we were going to try to solve those. And some of them, like, you can't solve. Like, there are some underwriting guidelines you have to adhere to, but there were some things like draws, for example. It would always take 7 to 10 days to receive a draw payment, where I've got a contractor needing to be paid the day it's completed. So we really dug into trying to solve that. And there's a lot, I could go over a lot of things, but being not only building a portfolio using hard money ourselves, but still actively in the markets and where we lend and still trying to make deals work. It just gives us a perspective that we can really provide a product that helps us, right? We got to be profitable, but also kind of addresses a few issues that these flippers are having that we're aware of. So it does make us strong in that standpoint.
I love that you brought up draws because that
Yeah.
has been such a headache. We were working with one hard money lender that we had done over $100,000 worth of work and was waiting for this draw to come in. And they wanted just this one paper signed by our second position, and it just held up everything. And it was such a nightmare. And so thank you for understanding and being
Yeah.
there and understanding how important it is to get that draw money quickly. So
Yep.
love it. And if the listeners are out there, who do you lend to? Do you lend to first time flippers? Do you only stick
Yeah.
to the East Coast? Tell us about that.
Yep. So we're set up to lend nationwide. We are initially, I'd say our first year, I mean, we're coming up on 2 years here in a couple months, but our first year we stuck exclusively to Virginia, and in the markets we were doing deals. And that was just a risk mitigation, because if a deal went bad and we had to go through a foreclosure, it's right here where we're doing deals anyway. We started expanding into North Carolina, and now we are in primarily Virginia, North Carolina. We've got a lot of deals in Georgia, a few in South Carolina, and we're kind of taking on states as they come to us. And like,
Okay.
let's say a new state comes to us, somebody comes to us with a deal from Iowa. Well, we're going to research the lending laws in that state, the foreclosure laws and all that. And if it makes sense for us to expand there, we will. So.
Wonderful. And how do they get a hold of you if they want to borrow some funds?
Yep. So a couple ways. They can go to our website, which is 608B as in boy capital.com. So 608bcapital.com. We have a borrow form there. Very simple. Submit that if you have a deal to look at, or we're on all the social media. So if you want to drop the links or whatever in the notes, they can find us there, send us a message. Yeah, that's pretty simple. So.
Awesome. And I bet you're so easy to work with. So thank you for sharing all that. And
You're welcome.
when I was on your podcast, we were just kind of shooting the shit beforehand. And I was saying how I love past projects. And like I said, you're such an expert in so many other aspects of real estate investing. But I feel like the listeners love hearing about past projects. And this one was your first flip. Is that correct?
That's correct. The first intended flip. I had flipped some houses before that. Like when my wife and I got married, we moved 6 times in our first 4 or 5 years of marriage, because we were kind of buying live-in fix and flips. So we would live there, we'd fix them up ourselves, but they were no strategy. We were just kind of winging it. But this was my first intended buy it, flip it, sell it. So.
All right. So we have some specific questions here to go through. So let's start with the property description. How many beds and baths? When was it built? Anything special about the property? Go for it, Jason. Let's hear about this property.
Gotcha. And this was back in, I think, 2017. So I had to like do some digging to get all the numbers and stuff like that organized, but I got them here. So it was built in 1982. It was a 1-story, 3-bed, 1-bath on a crawl space, which we'll get into. And it was it was not on like town or city water and septic. So it was on a well and a septic system. And so I'll get into that as well. But yeah, just a 1,300 square foot, 3-1, built in 1982.
And would you buy another 3-1 again, or did you, well, I'm sure we'll find this out, did you convert it to a 3-2? Because I know just having that one bathroom is tough, but sometimes for rentals it works out fine. But was that part of what you were planning to do with it?
For this one, so like typically, like with that square footage, 1,300, it's pretty easy to find room for another bathroom. So we've done a lot of that. This was not the case. This was kind of a strange layout. So we would actually had to build another bathroom as an addition, and it didn't make sense. And the comps in the area supported what we were targeting for an ARV at a 3-1. A lot of good comps when we bought it, which was, I'll say it was just me at the time. But so yeah, we kept it as a 3-1. No intentions to add another bathroom.
Okay. And yeah, if everyone has a 3-1, then that is perfectly fine.
Yep.
All right. So how did you find this property? Was it through marketing, a wholesaler, MLS? How'd you find it?
Yep. So we bought most of our deals over the years through wholesalers. We just had a very good relationships with a handful of them, but this one was not that. This was a foreclosure that had hit the MLS, and a realtor buddy of mine just brought it to my attention. I wasn't looking in this particular area. Again, back then I was head down in my corporate career, so I was just buying deals as they came to me. But this one was brought to me from the MLS as a foreclosure.
And how do foreclosures work up in Virginia? Because I know in North Carolina, there's a bidding process, there's a 10-day upset bid period, and it's too much for my brain to grasp. So I just avoid the auctions and foreclosures. I go
Yep.
after pre-foreclosures, but how's it work up in Virginia?
Right. So this one had been, I had gone through the auction process. The bank, it didn't sell at auction. The bank now owned it. And so they had it, they have a sales rep, a listing agent that listed on the MLS. And then typically they'll structure it where they're taking offers for the next 5 days, and then they'll call for highest and best, and then that's the situation. So that's what we did, and we just happened to win out. So, and there's a reason for that.
And what was the asking price?
So they had it starting at 90 grand, and I went in. They were also letting folks tour the house, get in it, and look at it before making offers. So that helped a lot. But I offered 75 and got it for 75. So,
Nice.
yep.
All right. So what were the estimated repairs at the time of evaluation?
Yep. So it was, well, the total initial budget was 40 grand, right? And it was not a major lift. It was your basic cosmetic. We just had to update everything. So kitchen, bath, flooring, paint. There was we were aware, and it was disclosed that there were some septic issues to the septic system. It had a conventional septic system. And so we were aware of that. And I had dealt with that before on some of my rentals, and it had never been I just overlooked it. It had never been a really big expense. So I kind of budgeted maybe max 3 or 4 grand for that. And that's not what ended up happening. But other than the septic, everything else was just cosmetic and pretty simple, but about a $40,000 budget.
Okay. And how did you purchase the deal?
So this one, I used my own cash. So
Okay.
yeah, I didn't have and at that point, again, this was 2017. We hadn't used any other people's money or bank money or anything like that, other than refinancing on some of our rentals. But everything at that time was being done through my HELOC or my own cash, and this one was 100% my own cash. So,
And I feel like HELOCs, I'm glad you brought that up because we have financed deals through our own personal HELOC as well. And I feel like that's an untapped source for so many. And what a great idea. And just curious, what was the interest payment you're paying? I know you bought this one with cash, but what was the typical interest payment on your HELOC when you're financing deals?
yeah, so the HELOCs, I mean, every bank structures them differently, but most of them are tied to the prime rate. So a prime plus a point, or prime right at prime. And so it's a variable rate at the time. I mean, this was 2017. I want to say our HELOC rate was 4%. It was not, and you think about that, you're only paying interest as you use the money. So it's not like you're paying on the full loan balance. So I could go and draw the 75 grand off of it to buy this house, which I didn't do it this way for
Right.
this one, and just pay on interest on that, and then pay interest as I pay my contractors and stuff. So the bulk of our early deals were done through our HELOCs. And I fortunately had paid down my first mortgage balance on my house quite a bit. So I had a lot of equity in my primary house, still do. So, yeah.
Very nice and super
Yep.
smart. All right. So, loaded question here. What was your projected timeline versus the actual timeline? And were there any
So
surprises?
lots of surprises. We'll get into that, but yeah, the projected timeline was 3 months, and we actually, for everything we needed to do initially, we hit that. So we
Okay.
we actually came in a little less than 3 months. So, and that's rare. Usually our projects were, well, and this one ultimately didn't come in at 3 months, but what we thought we had to do did come in at 3 months. So yeah.
All right. So, what were the surprises? This is where we unload here. So, tell us
Yep.
all about this foundation, the septic. What happened here?
Okay. So this is, and I'm very thankful that when you asked me to get on here, like we could have talked about a bunch of stuff in real estate, but I got excited when you asked me to share a shit show property because I've had a couple of them, but this being my first flip, I love like reflecting back and all the lessons learned. But
Yes.
so when we initially put the house under contract, I had a 7-day due diligence period. So for my own informational purposes, I paid my inspector that has inspected a bunch of deals at the time for us. But I said, hey, can you go out there, just inspect this property, just make sure I'm not missing anything. So he goes in, does his normal thing. He calls me that same day from the property. He said, Jason, everything looks great. I went underneath, crawl space looks great, but there was an addition added that has an extremely tight crawl space, and they didn't leave very good access to that part of the house. He said, I can trench my way into it. It's about a 500 square foot addition that was added. He said, I can trench my way into it, check it out. That's up to you. This is what it would cost. I said, man, it's a newer addition. Everything else looks good. I said, were you able to at least shine a light in there and see any portion of it? He said, I can't see anything that stands out bad, but I cannot sign off on saying it's good. I said, well, let's roll with it. We'll move on. So we buy it and thinking everything was good. We do our rehab. One surprise that came up during rehab, I mentioned the septic earlier. So it was more than just a little maintenance issue that had to be I was thinking maybe a distribution box or something had to be replaced. $1,500, $2,000. Well, guy comes out there, tells me that the whole system's shot. There's a crack in it. There's a lot of bad stuff going on. It needs to be replaced. I got a second person just to get a second opinion. Same report. So now I'm thinking, okay, well now I've got to spend $6 or $7,000 on a new septic system. Well, the county required me to get a new perk test done. It did not perk for a conventional system, and there's no grandfathering it in or anything like that. So $15,000 later, I had to put in a alternative septic system. If you're familiar with those, or
No.
yeah, you'll see a lot of times that there'll be like you'll see a couple green tanks, the tops of them on the ground. They're just a weird looking
Okay.
system, but
Yes.
it allows you, if the soil doesn't take a conventional system or doesn't get approved, it allows you an opportunity, but it's about double the cost. So I had to bite that bullet, and that ran my budget up to now we're at like 55 grand, but still a lot of meat on the bone. So it's
Okay.
not the end of the world. We do that, and stop me if you have any questions. I'm gonna roll right through it
Well,
unless you.
let's talk about what a perk test is and
Yeah.
why it's super important. I'm actively looking at purchasing some land, so I'm learning a lot about perk test, and it's PERK. I'm sorry,
That's right.
PERC. People spell it PERK, but
I
it's
still do. So
oh, it's
yeah.
for percolation. I know that
Yes,
much.
that's
So
right.
quickly explain what it means for the ground to perk, PERC.
Yeah. So your septic, like most people are probably doing deals that are tied to like city or county water, sewer. So you don't even have to think about this. But if it's not, you got to put a septic system in, which is a system that basically manages all the waste coming from the house. So your water, your commode, all that stuff. So it's got to go through a system and a process to break that down and go into a tank. Well, it has a drain field as a component of it. And so your soil has to be at a high level. Your soil has to be dense enough or has enough room to fit that drain field and everything for that whole process. So they come out and they basically take a soil sample to test the soil to see if it fits for a conventional septic system. If it does not, they have what is called an alternative septic system that basically uses a completely different process. You kind of have like above ground tanks and stuff like that. It's a pretty complex system, and that is double, sometimes triple the cost depending on how much drain field you have to put in and stuff like that. So the perk test on land, on raw land, is always going to be required to determine what type of system is needed. So.
Well, Jason, you taught me because I did not know about this alternative one. And I just
Yeah.
thought if the soil doesn't perk, move on to the next piece of
No,
land.
there,
So,
yeah, there's options. I mean, my brother built a house in our area, couldn't find, I mean, he built on a big piece of land, but could not find a single place on the land that perked. So he had to spend, I don't know, 20, 25 grand because it's a bigger house to put in the system, but you can do it. So
wow. So
just got to be
another,
aware of it, and I wasn't. So
and thank you for teaching that to me. And
yeah.
another reason why we called this the shit show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And by the way, I didn't even ask this question. I skipped right over this. So you purchased the property for 75. What was the initial ARV at the time of purchase?
Yep. So the initial ARV, and like I said, we had a lot of comps to pull off of. So this was a very confident number, but it was 175,000. And we'll get to that at the end of
Okay.
the story. But that ends up being a positive piece of this story because we sold it for a good bit more than that. But we'll get to that in a minute. So.
Perfect. All right. So you fixed the septic, and then let's get to this crawl space.
Okay.
And by the
So
way, I don't like crawl spaces. That's where they hide the dead bodies, by the way.
yeah,
So I don't
exactly.
even go near there, but it is absolutely worth paying someone to crawl through there. So go ahead.
I would have much rather found a dead body than what we ended up finding. So,
Oh no. I even buy
so
skeletons at Halloween and put them in crawl spaces. I do that on purpose.
yeah, that's a fantastic idea.
All right, keep
So,
going.
so the work is done. The house looked, I mean, my contractor knocked it out of the park. Looked fantastic. The only thing in the crawl space that needed to be done, that the primary crawl space that the inspector saw, we pulled out all the old moisture barrier and put new in. That was it. It was well insulated. Everything was good. So we didn't really have to do anything under there. That got done. I remember when my contractor went under there to do that, he asked me, he said, or do you need us to get under the addition piece and do that? He's like, it's a real tight crawl space, but same thing. We can trench in there and do it. And again, I said, I think we're good. It was an addition that was added 15 years ago. We should be fine.
So was it permitted at the time?
No. Right. So I made a lot of missteps here. So I just saw it as an addition. I just hindsight's 2020. I know now not to do this, but there was an assumption that everything was done right and we're good to go. It looked nice from the outside, the room itself inside. There were no sagging floors, anything like that. So we just rolled with it. But he said, "You're like, you sure you don't want me to check it out?" I was like, we're fine. So we get it all completed. We stage it, and we put it on the market for 180,000. That's what the list
Great.
price was. Within 48 hours, we had a contract on it for 187,000.
Nice.
So we're fired up. Like, this is a home run, but it did have contingent upon an inspection. So, and I'm a very ethical person. So what I'm about to say is kind of a joke, but we had another offer for, I think, 184 with no inspection, and it was a cash offer. And no, that one was not a cash offer. It was just no inspection. And we went with the $3,000 higher offer because I was convinced that there was nothing wrong with this property. Like, we fixed everything. So had we gone with the other one, it would have been unfortunate for them, but they would have run into the same shit show that I ultimately did. So we go in there, we accept the offer, it's under contract, they schedule their inspection. Their inspection, I don't know, a day or so after they get their inspection done, we get contacted by their broker and said they found a bunch of chaos under the house. Like, that's not possible. Yeah. And so they're backing out. And I said, well, I need to know what it is. And what it was, they said the addition piece, number one, there was no permit. It was built kind of in the space of an old deck that was there. Everything was done. Now their inspector had actually trenched in and inspected it. So I got to see all the pictures. Jen, the floor joist, there was nothing salvageable. Like it was dangerous. The Once I got my contractor in there, he said, we can't be under here. We have to work from the top down. It was that bad. And so what had happened, it was built. And again, if people are listening to this, you said earlier, I'm an expert in all these areas and stuff like that. I was not at the time. I didn't know what I didn't know. And this was a major shit show, literally, because I didn't do my due diligence.
Right.
But what they had done is they built basically unpermitted addition that was very easily hidden from, like, nobody could see that they were doing it because it's kind of set off the road a little bit. It was in a good area to get away with this. And they didn't put any moisture barrier. The joists were very low to the ground, hence why they had to trench in there. And probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years of just constant moisture, and everything had rotted everything under there. Everything was just complete rot. So now I'm like, what the hell do I do? Like, this is going to be a major issue. My buyer's gone. I can't sell it like this. I can't try to hide this or anything like that. So my contractor gets under there. He assesses it. He said, man, this is going to be at least 50 grand. We basically have to rebuild this and work from the top down to build it back up.
So you're going through the floor at this point.
Yeah. Yep. So now granted, remember, this whole house is staged. It looks beautiful. So now we got to get everything out of there. We've got to have them come in, and I didn't want to waste any time. I'm not one to sit there and waste time waddling in my sorrow. So I didn't want to do that. I said, let's get to work. We got to fix it. So they go to work, and it was, I don't know, 2 days later, he sends me pictures, and it's literally of them standing on the dirt in the house. There's nothing but the cinder block foundation and the walls going up, and they've got to now rebuild everything. They had to do a bunch of restructuring to get everything level and where it needed to be off the ground and stuff like that. So to make that part of it a little shorter, they did all that, and it was right at 50 grand. I mean, that was the pain from it, and literally ate up every penny. I was going to make, in my mind, I was going to make 50 grand on this deal, so they got it all fixed, took a couple months, and then we got it back on the market. So,
well, let's back up a little bit to the whole permitting process, because how would one who's listening, who would be in the same shoes you are and say, hey, this was done more recently, it looks totally legit, but how would one go and find if they actually pulled permits to create this addition?
Well, every county has its own source to do that. In this case, there was, again, I'm remembering things on the fly as I'm telling this story. Again, this is 8 years ago, but the county, just like I do with every deal, I pull up the county website and look at the property itself. Well, the county had this as like a 900 square foot home. Well, it was 1,300. There's your red flag there, exactly. Right? Now I know, okay, why is there a discrepancy? I can dig. I know exactly how to find that out. So I can go and say, oh, they enclosed this screen porch, or they enclosed whatever, and now it's part of the square footage, and I can verify that permits were pulled, and you just work through the county for that. At the time I saw that, I was like, oh, they did an addition. The county just hadn't updated their systems. Again, rookie mistake, but that was the red flag. And had I followed that trail to find out, oh, they did do this addition, the county was never aware of it. So was there a permit pulled? No. Okay, let me dig deeper. Maybe I should get under this crawl space and check it out. So yeah, I didn't do any of that.
And this brings up a past project that we did where it was a 1,600 square foot home, but it was listed as 2 bedrooms. So my immediate thought is it's on a 2-bedroom septic. But then I did a little more research, and it was on city water and sewer. And so we went to look at the house. The reason why it was 2 bedrooms is because you had to walk through 1 bedroom to get to the 3rd bedroom.
Mhm.
So just a little reconfiguration, it then increased the value of the property by calling it a
Yep.
3 bedroom, what it truly was, and putting a door in the actual hallway. So I love finding deals like that, but that is a huge red flag. I'm so glad you brought it up. If you think you're buying a 1,300 square foot home, but tax, it says it's only 900 something square feet, that's where you can really assume that that was not permitted and updated
Yeah.
in the tax record. So
Yep.
thank
And
you for
you,
bringing that up. Yeah.
yeah, and I want to stay on the point you just made, because this some of our best deals are exactly what you can look at. Like, we have found deals on the MLS where it advertises as a 2-1, but it's, again, or maybe a 2-2, but it's 1,500 square feet. I
Yep.
know right away. Like, I kind of, you can set your screening to search for these properties, 2 bedroom over 1,400 square feet. There's room even over 1,200 to put a 3rd bedroom. There's always room, like, to reconfigure a wall. And a lot of people are ignoring those deals because they're filtering for 3-2s or something like that. Well,
Yep.
just there's your value add. So.
Huge.
Yeah.
And now, were you starting this as a business by this? Because I know you did some house hacking with your wife, but this was your first intended flip. Did you
Yeah.
have your LLC, your business structure ready to go?
Well, so at the time, I had my first LLC, because everything I'd done, my wife and I had done previously, we were just buying, I mean, just in our personal names. That had no strategy. And this was like, I had been doing the burr process. So I think I had 3 or 4 rentals at the time that I had burred, but this, and all under my LLC. And I was flipping this house under that same LLC. We went on to, through a partnership, we created a new LLC. But yes, this was through my LLC.
So the reason I want to commend you is because this is your business and you said it, you have to make it right. You already know that there's an issue here. You can't turn around and sell it to that 184 offer. You
Yep.
can't do that. I don't know in Virginia if you, I know in Florida, if you have an inspection report, you have to disclose it for the next, like if the buyer backs out. I don't think you have to do that in North Carolina now that I think about it. But did you have to disclose that in Virginia, that there was an inspection report and that's the reason why the buyers backed out?
That's a great question. We did. I don't, I wanted to be fully transparent because I didn't want to get into it. Like, the new buyer going to use an inspection. They're going to see some work's been done under there. I just wanted to be fully transparent. So we actually, not only when we listed it again and had offers and got it under contract, we provided the inspection report along with pictures of every phase of the rehab showing that it was done quality. We had to get permits and the whole 9 yards. So yeah, we provided that. That's just ethically the right thing to do. I don't want to, I mean, somebody's buying this house to live in it with their family. So you got to do the right thing.
And there are no unethical flippers out there, are there?
Right. Yeah, absolutely not.
And I say that, and we kind of laugh about it, but it is so true. And because this was at the start of your business, I love that you really were thinking in the long run here, because it could have been real easy to go back into that 184 and be like, hey, by the way, we'll give it to you for 180 if you want. But to be ethical, to have integrity in your business, I feel like a lot of these people who are newer coming out, they are real quick to cut corners. Prices are really high right now, buying properties to flip. So every penny counts. So thank you for that example and sharing that, because I feel like that's probably one of the biggest lessons here is you have to do what's right for the buyers, for your business as well. And that will
Yep.
tenfold come back, great karma for you. All right.
Yep.
So any other surprises before you go to list this property? Relist it.
No, I mean, for as crazy as all it sounds, like all the surprises we had, we were able to just get right to work and get them fixed. Like the whole septic system issue. Like, I just don't, we'll talk about it a little bit more towards the end, I guess, but I never sit in a problem too long, right? It does not do any good. So I'm just wired to say, shit, I screwed up. Let's go fix it. And
Right.
so yeah, I mean, because there were 2 major issues, the septic kind of major, and then obviously the $50,000 mistake major, but we fixed it. We got to work. We had a plan and we executed on that. So
So how long did that take you?
So to get to this mindset or to fix the problem?
To fix the
Right.
problem and
Yeah.
relist it.
Yeah. About 2 months. I would say it was back on the market. I don't remember exact dates, but 2.5 months probably. So
Okay.
all together, we ended up, by the time I closed on the sale, it was about a 6 month process. So
Gotcha. And that's not too bad.
nope.
All right. So final numbers here. Your started purchase price was 75. They were asking 90. Your ARV at the time was 175. And your estimated repairs at time of purchase was 40K. So what were your actual repairs?
Yep. So actual repairs with the septic and the crawl space issues, we ended up at 105,000. Went in expecting 40 and spent 105.
Ooh, and I bet there are listeners who that never happens. Everyone
No,
always stays within
I mean,
budget.
no joke. I probably could have built that house for 105,000.
In
Seriously.
2017, yes, price
Yeah.
per square foot back then, absolutely. Well
Yeah.
said.
And
Oh my goodness.
so anyway, but that's what it was. So
Wow. All right. And then you didn't have any interest. You didn't
nope.
borrow money, you used your own cash. So that was a huge help right there, not having to pay interest on things. How about holding costs and commissions and closing costs? What were some of those numbers?
Yeah, I kind of have them listed out here. So, fortunately, one of my best friends is a realtor in that area, so he's very generous with his discounting commissions and when we need to. So, I was able to sell it for 4%. So that was eight
Nice.
thousand dollars because the final selling price was 195,000. So yeah, that saved some ground there. But holding costs were about 1,500. There were 6,000 in closing costs on the purchase and the sale side, and then again the sales price was 195. So we during the saving grace for all of this was during all of this. I mean, it was a 6 month period. The market was just in that area. There was a big demand. It's close to a military base. Just things timing wise, there were some benefits to everything going on. So it pushed that ARV up 20 grand over what we were
Nice.
projecting. And when we relisted it, we actually relisted it. I want to say it was 185, and it came down to like a bidding war, and we ended up taking a 195,000 offer with an inspection. That all went fine, and we closed at that price. So, yeah.
All right. Big question here. What was your total profit from this property?
Negative $500.
Ah, that
Yep.
is not bad at all to lose 500
So,
bucks and the millions of lessons that you learned along the way.
yeah.
So that is not bad at all.
No, so in my mind, I lost 50 grand because that's what I was expecting to make. But in reality, I mean, I used my own cash. It sat out there for 6 months, and it was a $500 lesson. I had a $500 education, and I would have paid $500 to go sit in a classroom and learn what I learned. So that's the way I have to view it to find some positive out of it. So.
Absolutely. And Jason, thank you for sharing this. So, any major changes that you did when you were purchasing your next deals after this that you
Yeah,
applied to everything else?
quite a bit. So I can't say I never will, and I haven't since, but I try to shy away from properties that are on well and septic, that on their own, right?
Yep.
There's just too many complications come or potential complications, and it's tough. Like these things are under the ground, like to really assess what you have under there, that's costly just to get a thorough inspection on that. So try to avoid those. We'll take them on if it's newer homes, but I'm going to spend the money to get those things inspected, and I'm always going to over budget for any surprises on those. So that was a big lesson learned there.
And we've had to
Second
replace a
one,
well. Yeah, we've had to replace a well, and that was close to $25,000. So
yep,
that is painful.
yeah,
I
they're not fun. So we try to just stick to the places that we're tapped into city stuff. So just makes everything cleaner. The other one is uh, crawl space. I mean, this is like even as a rookie, I should have paid more attention to this, but I will never buy another property that has a crawl space without thoroughly looking at every inch of that crawl space. I don't care if it's an auction property that we can't access and it goes for 20 grand. I don't care. I'm not buying another headache like that or potential headache like that. So crawl space is first and foremost on the list of we're going to vet that thing out and find every nook and cranny and make sure they're, yeah, and if it has issues, we account for that before we make our offer or counter whatever.
Budget for it, yes.
Yep, exactly.
And getting that inspection, I think, is huge. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to be doing so much work for it. And going back to crawl spaces, because water penetration can be one of the biggest killers of a project. And people will buy firehouses, not a fire station, but a house that was on fire. And actually, the most damaging part is the water that it took to put out the fire can be even more damaging to projects, future projects as well. So, and lastly, another thing that I'm sure you check now are permits to make sure things were permitted. We bought a property recently. There was a hot tub in this weird addition on this master bathroom, and it was literally a hot tub in this house. And I was like, this looks shady. We pulled it and we did this house feels much larger than 1,000 square feet. So that was our red flag right there. We had to tear down the whole property because of a lot of water penetration. So
yeah.
Lots of lessons, Jason. Thank you for sharing this project. And we are going to move to the second part of the podcast here, which is what makes Jason Seward a badass. And I use the acronym BADASS, and the first letter is B for book. What's a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
So I'm a big reader, and I wasn't until like my mid 30s. So right. I'm embarrassed to say I made it to that point, and people listening are going to be like, how, what? I had never read an entire book until like, I'm serious, other than like kid books, but like through high school and stuff, I just kind of creatively got my way through with Cliff Notes and whatever.
Notes.
As a like high functioning ADHD person, sitting there reading was always just an overwhelming experience for me. So I didn't really dive into reading until like my mid 30s. And even then it's mostly audiobooks when I'm working out or driving or something like that. But if I got to narrow it down to one, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink probably had the most profound impact on me, just basically. And this real estate example I shared is a good example of that. All of this happened because it was my fault. I have to take ownership on it. And I try to apply that to every area of my life, even when it's hard to take ownership sometimes because maybe somebody or some other circumstance influenced the outcome. It's hard to do that sometimes, but I always try to have that perspective. It's my fault. I control it, nothing else. So.
Very well said. And I love Jocko's voice. He's got such a sexy Mufasa voice. I love it.
I won't go there, but he's got a good voice. So.
All right. The first A in Badass is for advice. You've given us plenty of great advice by sharing this past project, but what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yep. So this is I have it all over a lot of places in my life. Particularly you walk into my house, it's in lettering on the wall. But it's something that my mom said to us when we were young quite a bit. Cause I had and we don't have to get into it, but I had a kind of a difficult childhood with a lot of circumstances there. But my mom used to say, we can't control the wind, but we can adjust our sails. So basically it kind of goes back to ownership. Whatever bad is happening in life, we assess it, we figure it out, and we move on, and we control where we go with it. And that's one that, just has always stuck with me.
Excellent words from Mom. And I love all the nautical themes, including from your podcast as well, of burning ships and everything.
Yep.
So great tie in there. All right. The D in Badass is for drive. What drives you to be successful?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's a couple things, but I can kind of narrow it down to one. Like I want to be valuable in this life, right? I want to figure out ways that I can provide value, whether that be a good student, maybe a mentor to some people, invest in good quality things, add value to my family, my friends, my network. And I don't like letting people down. My biggest motivator is you started this podcast off with a great topic that's top of mind all the time. That's accountability.
Yep.
My relationship with accountability groups and stuff like that is I have to force those things in my life because I'm driven by not letting people down. And if I'm being held accountable by someone to something, I'm not going to let them down. I'm always going to deliver when that is the ultimate motivator. So yeah, I mean, it's just not adding value to every possible situation I can and showing up for people, not letting them down.
And I love that you mentioned being a student too, because I've been in the coaching business, but I'm also a student. I'm doing a course right now on public speaking and doing TED Talks. I just announced it to the world about TED Talks. Well, it's TEDx Talks. There's a difference there. But I just am a big believer in that. You have all this experience and you mentor people through your podcast, and I'm sure others around you, but being a good student as well, because this is ever evolving, this industry, and there's always things to learn. So thank you for saying that.
Absolutely.
All right. The second A in Badass is for aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. So what is a goal you are currently working on? 20 million.
Yeah, that's the I mean, when it comes to business and real estate, that is our primary goal. I always have a lot of goals personally and professionally, but my big one right now, and we are absolutely locked in on it. Everything we're doing is driving to this one goal of making $20 million in loan volume for 2025. So we're well on track. I'm not sure when this will come out, but right now our first quarter goal to track to that was 7 million to kind of get ahead of pace. And we're mid-March right now, and we're well ahead of that. So we're on good pace. So as long as we keep doing what we know we need to do, stay locked in, we should be good. So
I am so proud of you, because that is such an accomplishment, and to set those lofty goals and to like nail the hell out of it. And you're only not even midway through the year. So I'm super proud of you, Jason. And thanks for doing what you do for others as well, because it's huge having good lenders as well. All right. The first S in Badass is for systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
yeah, so this is a relatively new, and when I say new, it's kind of I've really leaned in on it since leaving my corporate career, 3 years ago, and now being really having full control over my time. And so one thing I've always struggled, I mentioned the ADHD and stuff like that, is just focus, right? And locking in on what I need to lock in on consistently. So my biggest change to help me do that is, as far as systems go, is time blocking. I know it's cliche, but when I create boundaries around tasks, like I work best when things are urgent and I have a deadline. There's nothing else that's gonna get me to complete something, even if if it's to save the world. If I've got to do this task to save the world by next Friday, I'm probably gonna start on it Thursday night, right? And I'm gonna get it done. I'll always get it done, but I gotta have. So I play this kind of game where, using my accountability partners and stuff like that, I put deadlines on myself and set these boundaries to give me that pressure that mentally I need to complete things. And I do that through just my calendar, and that's my system. I just create time blocks around everything.
I love time blocking, and I am not as adamant about it now, but I used to do 7 to 9 was marketing when I was hitting the flips hard. 9 to 11 was, what did I do 9 to 11? Oh, it was meeting contractors. So first thing in the morning, if I have to meet them on site, deliver stuff or whatever, 11 to 12, and then you schedule a lunch break in there. I did education. I thought it was really important to keep adding in education. And then Vance was still working his W-2, and he would come back, and then we would go look at properties at the end of the day. So I think having that little buzz in your phone that says, oh, now it's time for education, where I can just, okay, let me open a book and get my brain going here, or okay, I've done enough marketing. Let me now focus on what I need for my projects at 9 o'clock, et cetera. So I am a big believer in that. And I want to, Go ahead.
Well, I just want to make one point there. So like what you're saying is exactly right. So that's kind of how I do it. But what doesn't work too well for me is if it's a reoccurring time block. Like if I schedule my calendar where every Monday, 7 to 9, I'm going to do X, and 9 to 11, I'm going to do Y. That doesn't work as well for me because I get so bored and mundane things. Like if I'm doing the same thing, if I know I'm doing it today and next Monday I got to do it again, I get bored. So the way I have solved that, because I tried that early on a couple years ago, what works better for me is my wife and I sit down every Sunday and go over the coming week's calendar, and I build out my time blocks at that point. So we fill it up with all the family requirements and all the stuff we want to do. Then I load in the business stuff, and then I know for that week, this is all I got to focus on. And then next week we'll figure it out when we get there. So that's been a very good approach for me. So.
And Vance and I also do Sunday evenings, 5 o'clock. We have our team meeting. And,
okay.
Even when you share a toothbrush holder with someone, you still got to like touch base. And really quick, what insurance did you do? Did you do health insurance, or what type of
So I don't mind. I love the company I work for, still in good relationship with them, but it was Farm Bureau Insurance. Yep. And based out of Virginia. And I did property and casualty. So your typical home, auto, commercial. And then I did life and annuities. So I was selling those products for probably my first 8 years, and then I got into management leadership. So when I left, I was like a territory manager, agency manager, and had teams under me and stuff like that. So, yep.
Very nice. I was in health insurance for a hot minute, and so glad I got out of it.
Yeah, right. It's insurance world is crazy right now. I'm not regretting getting out of it when I did, but
I hear you. I got in health insurance when the Affordable Care Act came through. So that was like a good shift for everybody there. But yeah, I'm glad I got out of it. All right, Jason, I could talk to you all day, but the final S in badass is for success. What does success mean to Jason Seward?
Yeah. Your question kind of leading up to this has made me think about it. So I can go a bunch of different ways, but like to really shuck it down to the cob is
that's such a Southern Virginia thing to say.
I really narrow it down to just complete control of my time. That's it. And I'm close. I still, right. I mean, I'm going to always be involved with business at some level, but by being an entrepreneur, that was the first step to get out of that corporate career, that W-2 career, which I loved, but I didn't like at the end of the day, I didn't own it. It wasn't mine.
Right.
So to get out of that into what I'm doing now gave me a massive leap towards having that ultimate control of every minute of every day. If I want to go to the beach, I go to the beach. If I want to lock in and work for 12 hours on my business, I do that. And that is ultimate success for me. And it's not the money is a piece of it, because the money has to pay for all the things I enjoy and keep the business going. But that's not even in the top 5 of my priorities. It is just freedom and flexibility around everything I do. So,
well, I agree 1,000% with that. And so thank you so much for coming on the show today. And one more time, how do they find your 608B capital funding? How do they find it?
608bcapital.com. And then we're all over social media. So just look for us there. We got pages for 608B. We got pages for Burning the Ships. And then personally, Jason Seward, I'm on all the platforms. So.
Yeah, you have a really good marketing person, because I've been watching some of your reels, and you have some great stuff in there. So thank you for that. And definitely check out Burning the Ships podcast, and that's everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yep, everywhere. We're on video version on YouTube. Everything else is audio. So.
And I, as well, am working on video stuff. We talked about this last time, and going into that transition to do more vodcasting instead of just podcasting. So, Jason, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And that is all. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josey by visiting therealjenjosey.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.